People, deluded, I'm back again. Now, obviously, it's sad for our young players, or for all young players, whether you're at Arsenal, Chelsea, whatever, because you know a lot of them have had good seasons. You know, some people have been couple under 18s at all clubs, Arsenal, Chelsea, everyone. I've seen, you know, it's United, so it's irrelevant, but Amari Forson, 15 years of age, playing in the under 18s. You know, you've had a couple schoolboys at Arsenal, Charlie Patino playing in the under 18s. You know, a couple of players in the under 18s pushing up to 23s. Couple players that are in the 23s. You know, Tyrese John Jules, Olayinka, man like that, and at other clubs going on loan to develop and stuff. So it's been a kick in the teeth for a lot of players because academy football's been scrapped, you know. Probably just have to focus on pre-season, and I believe League One and League Two have now been scrapped as well, which leaves everybody in limbo. I'm not too sure on the status of under 23s football, how it works, because I don't know if Tyrese John Jules, for example, is training at Arsenal, but I imagine if he was, he'd be involved in the friendlies. I've seen other youngsters involved in the last 2 games, but I don't know what's going on with him and Greenwood and all of these other players. Because Greenwood's not on loan, but Greenwood's at the club. Tyrese a better example because he's on loan. Olayinka, I believe, is in the semi-finals of the League Two playoffs, and you know they could get promoted. Tyrese obviously was injured and wouldn't be playing at all anyways, but that season is now done. Ben Shafe, who's made 30 odd appearances for Doncaster, you know, his season is done. Probably throws him up in limbo. You know, it's nice to see Trae Coyle make his unofficial debut in a friendly for the first team, but football's just been thrown on its head, and it is a sticky one because when does football get back going? Because you'd imagine the fitness levels for some players, obviously you can get your match fitness, but it sucks a bit really because, you know, there's no academy football. We don't know when it's going to come back next season. For me, again, I'm not informed. So if League One said, okay, cool, we're starting in September or August again, it doesn't matter. But for a number of players at Arsenal and elsewhere that potentially was going to head out to League One on loan or things like that, they're not going to be able to do that really and truly, because what happens to Ben Shafe now, for example, people? I think he's had a decent loan spell. I think he's deserved the right at least to train for a couple of weeks under Arteta and see if he can be used. He's been used at centre-half. He said he wants to be a centre midfielder. You never know what could happen. I think he's very underrated. I think he's a sound baller, and I think he's going to have a career in the Championship minimum. But at his age, he potentially needs to probably leave permanently and go somewhere where, you know, you can set up shop for a couple of years, rather than 1 minute you're at Arsenal, you're training with the first team, but you're really 23s, then you're going on loan and things like that. What happens to him now? I think he's put himself in the shop window for Championship clubs. You know, he's still under contract for a decent amount of time. You've had Bundesliga clubs are looking at him, but what happens in that regards? You get it? Tyrese John Jules, he's injured, so he probably wouldn't have played any more of this season. But what happens in relation to Lincoln and things like that? It sucks, people. Apparently, Premier League clubs fear academies going a further 6 months without competitive games and will look at footing the bill for youngsters to get loan games. One top 6 club will look to loan youngsters to EFL clubs when the season starts, and that probably will be it. And my fearful thing is, it's nice, but not every young player is going to excel on loan, because we know there's a lot of things they're going against. For more technical based players, if they was to be slapped into League One, they might not necessarily shine, because don't get twisted, they do play ball at that level, but it's mainly long balls and things like that. And sometimes what you might find a creative midfielder skilled in a 4-3-3, or how Arsenal might play. He goes on loan in a 4-4-2 team that does the long ball things where you have to be brute strength. Of course he's not going to stand out. That's going to hurt his development. That's going to kill his confidence. And you know, something needs to be done, because I do think we're at risk of robbing a lot of young players across the country of football, really and truly, and people. And obviously the futures of players are in limbo, because Olayinka's playing, you know, when does that season end? Probably in July. Mavropanos is still on loan. Saliba's season's done, but I still think the Cup, I've seen that the French Cup final could still go ahead against PSG. The French League's an interesting one, because I'm not too sure if any French teams are still in the Europa League, but in the Champs, their domestic season is done, but they're still in the Champs. Obviously they're not playing and being fit, so if they was to play Bundesliga clubs or Premier League clubs, you know, surely PSG or whoever's in the Europa League is at a disadvantage. But back to the young players, I'm concerned, man, because what happens with Tyrese next season? What's happening with Olayinka now? What happens with Saliba now? And you know, I'm rest assured, because we've got Mertesacker and people that are skilled with the youngster stuff, so it's nothing to be of concern. But I'd like to see where it is, and I think it's a blessing in disguise, because for me personally, a lot of our young players, you know, for me, Tyrese, Coyle to a degree, definitely Medley. Matt Smith is getting off that age as well. Ballard already went out on loan. A lot of these players, Swanson potentially now as well. You know, I'm sure Steve Bold wants them at under 23s level, and I'm sure they want to kick onto the first team. But I do think a lot of them, especially the defenders, someone like Medley, if he's not going to get opportunities significantly, go out on loan and play some football, play against grown men strikers, where your mistakes that you might make at under 23s level are going to be punished, so you can learn. Because I do believe when you play for a top 6 team, when you're a striker, you know, you're like Tyrese, Eddie. Why do you think they went out on loan? Because they're bullying all these. Bellingham will have to do it soon, because they're bullying all these under 23 strikers. When you're a defender like Medley, you know, you might make a mistake, it's not necessarily punished, and again, you're bullying these strikers. Where if you play in a division where, you know, you've got, again, it's not the best examples, but you've got players like Aguero, you've got players like Glenn Murray, you've got Shane Long, you've got all different, again, I'm not saying Premier League, but they're 3 different strikers. You've got street smart strikers, you've got strikers that might be out of the game for 89 minutes, you turn your back in the 90 if they've scored, physical target men that, you know, you have to battle with every game, sneaky little strikers hanging on the last shoulder. You can learn this at 23s level, because there's a lot of first team players playing, but I think consistently, a lot of these players should be exposed to that, and maybe the lack of clarity at this moment in time on the over academy football could be a blessing. The good thing is, you'd imagine by the time the next season starts, academy football will be back, but it sucks for everybody. Like someone like Sam Greenwood as well, baller, doing his thing at under 18s, but obviously he wants to push beyond and beyond, starting to make him, Ben Cottrell, starting to make inroads in the 23s on a permanent basis. You know, Daniel at right back, the same thing. Joe Lopez played against Liverpool earlier in the campaign at the 23. So it sucks that a lot of the progress, regardless of where they are, is being halted, but we'll have to see what happens in that regards, people. Moving away from that, though, and apparently Mark Ogden, I believe, has said in relation to Jude Bellingham, a midfielder I'd love to see at Arsenal. He said, they've, in brackets, Manchester United, got competition. I think Arsenal are quite keen, and Borussia Dortmund. Birmingham need the money and would rather the fee, around 20 million up front to get it all done. And I can't lie to you, people, I love Thomas Partey. I think you'd see more immediate results with him, because I believe you've got to take time with Jude Bellingham. He's 16, 17. Listen, I think he's going to be an England international. I think he's going to be a captain at club level. Genuinely believe he's going to be a very solid player. Not just him, that whole age group. You look at him, you look at Bayern Munich's Jamal Musiala, I can never pronounce his name. You look at Celtic's Dembele, you look at Noah Kenneth of Leeds. And I'm missing out a bag of names. There's some very good players, and I believe Jude is one of them. I would rather spend 20 million on Jude than 40 on Partey. You lot know me, I like young players and things like that. And of course, like I said, Partey more immediate results. But I think Jude Bellingham is going to be a terrific player in the near to distant future. Let's remember he's 16 and take time. And we've got other young players, so people might not knock this. But again, I'm not criticising anyone's opinion. But for me, I think he can develop into a goal-scoring midfielder. He can develop into a deep-line playmaker. He's got it all. He's got the goal-scoring. He's got the physicality. He's got the technical ability. Obviously, 20 million, he'll be worth 50 or so in the near distant future. So there's resale value. Obviously, he's from Britain and stuff like that. So there's more of that homegrown affiliation sort of thing. I believe it's a no-brainer, to be honest. I mean, you know, we never know. But I mean, the only problem is, will Arsenal have 20 million up front to go on a 16-year-old where, you know, you've got Partey, you want a centre-half, allegedly want a right-back? I'm not too sure. I think he will pay his transfer fee in many years, but it is what it is. For Jude, he's got a lot to consider, man. I mean, being in his shoes, you've got 3 fantastic clubs, well, main clubs. Arsenal have now been linked with him. Considering where we are as a club and who we are as a club, it is a fantastic opportunity for him. Dortmund, what they've done with Jadon Sancho, Champions League football, and I believe, like with Sancho, he could benefit from being out of the spotlight that you might get in the Premier League, where every good game you're one, every bad game this, that and the third. Could you imagine? Every move would have been scrutinised with Jadon Sancho, and I believe it will be when he moves back to the Prem eventually at some point, but he's better prepared. Obviously there's Champions League football, obviously there's a carrot of Bundesliga and what Dortmund are doing. Manchester United is Manchester United, and you know, apparently his parents and himself saw the training ground earlier in the season, so it might all be done really. And there's also, I know there's financial pressures and things, and it's the belly of the beast, but there's also nothing wrong with staying at Birmingham. You know, how many 16, 17-year-olds are playing week in, week out? You know, there's no pressure on him really and truly. He's enjoying his football every game. You're getting stronger. The move will come really, so there might, you know, there's nothing wrong with staying at Birmingham for a year or two, really and truly. There is nothing wrong with that. But we'll have to see what happens in that regards. If you lot remember, we haven't been linked with him again, but if you lot remember, we was linked with Jaden Bath, and it stinks of Jaden Sancho in the sense of this man's got so much ability on the flanks, people, and apparently Arteta wanted him. But apparently, I saw people saying, sources close to Jaden Bath have said the teenager has been disappointed by the lack of clarity and attention, having been told when signing for the club he would be given first team opportunities if he's developed. And that's promises our comfort to a full. City are going to tell you that, my guy. City are you're a baller, but you know, City have got however many ballers in the first team. And you know, being a young, sick player is just the bare minimum of being in that City team. I'm sure you went to City with the carrot of breaking into the first team. You know, when you look at City, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, what some of these young players should go with is obviously in the back of the mind, you want to make it at that club, you want to do your thing there, but you go there for a year to 3 years or whatever, you think, let me develop, let me make it, take advantage of this team's Cat A status, or the fact that, you know, I'm not a big fish in a small pond, which I might have been at previous clubs. Look at Rabbi Matondo, big fish in a small pond at Cardiff, went to City where, you know, you're still a great player because you got there, but being a good young player is the bare minimum, so you're not special. You work hard, you develop, you know, it's good being in an environment like that. There is the disadvantages, but the benefits are, you know, everybody's fighting for a shirt, so there's no complacency. You're playing with, being coached by world-class coaches. You're playing, if you go first team, you're training with world-class players, borderline. So you do all of that, you develop, and then you keep it moving like he's done. He's gone Schalke, you know, he's still not all the way there at Schalke, main player in the team yet. You develop and the world's your oyster. And Bath might have to do that. You look at Jaden Sancho, who picked the right club and's developing. You look at a negative example would be Diaz. Now Diaz is a baller. He ripped Arsenal at the Emirates. He could have probably left, went to a lesser team, developed. He went to Real Madrid. Is it a surprise you're not playing? Like, come on now. Like, even though it's probably the best time to be a young player in that Madrid team, really, but you're not playing. You might make it there, but you're not playing. So he might have to look at both examples and consider what next. Now, it probably won't be easy getting him. I'm sure City wouldn't want to lose him again. They're probably fearful of the Sancho thing. But if he is frustrated, it is something Arsenal should monitor in the potential hope of getting him. And I'm sure a bunch of other teams are looking at him as well, people. I spoke last video about Steve Round, and Arteta, and I've seen some comments I didn't speak about, so I thought I'd mention it. He said on Arteta, Steve Round, I'd coached him previously at another club when he was a player, and we kept a relationship going ever since. He got offered a job and rang me and asked if I'd come in and join his staff. And it's funny how it works, man. You was his teacher, and he's almost become not your teacher, but the apprentice or a student has now become someone that's got you hired, and that shows how, pardon me, why you should always look to build relationships with people, not just in football, but away from this people. So we'll have to see what happens in that regards. Moving away though, and apparently Emile Smith Rowe has had some things to say in relation to Arsenal. He said, I'm obviously happy for all the other boys, but I definitely want to go back and play as well. I think it would be great if more young players play. The main aim is to finish the season with Huddersfield as strong as I can and then go back to Arsenal in pre-season. And, you know, he should do that. You know, build up your confidence at Huddersfield like he's doing. They love him there. Come back and try and break in with Arteta. I don't think if it's a case of he doesn't break into the first team, it's over for him at Arsenal because he's still young. You know, there's every opportunity he could be used next season in the first team. But there's also every opportunity we might say, all right, cool, go back to the Bundesliga now that you're fully fit. Or let's get you a Norwich or a Villa, just assuming they stayed in the league. You stay there, you develop, you play, or a Palace or something. You come back next the season after that, and then it's real showtime. He's got to show Arteta he's developed. He's got to show Arteta he's ready. I believe he's got more ability in that cam position than Joe. I think Joe should be in the pivot, but looking at it at face value, what is Joe offering that you're not? So you've got to look at it and make sure you're offering the same, because Joe isn't the finished article, Nelson isn't the finished article, Martinelli and Saka are not the finished article. But why have they not gone on loan for beyond obvious reasons and stuff? So Emile's got to take a leaf out of their book and obviously show a bit more confidence, because I believe in the first team he is a bit of a confidence player, and I do believe he needs to come out of his shell a bit. You look at the game he started against Everton, very good in the second half, went missing in the first, and I think you know, that's only coming from playing games, from becoming confident, from believing in yourself a bit more. I think Emile's got the ability, but, you know, looking at it, you know, Ozil's future, we don't know what's going to happen. Mkhitaryan might go back to Roma, but he's someone that could probably play in that cam position. We don't know what's going to happen, so that's 2 men on paper. Joe Willock's ahead of him based on what we've been shown on the previous management and now, so that's 3 man. And, you know, we might bring in an next man, or we might say, you know what, we're not playing 2 pivots in a cam, we're doing a flat midfield 3, in which Emile is going to fall victim to that. Obviously, Emile's versatility helps him because he could develop long term to play as an 8. He can play on the flanks, but it seems like Aubameyang's got the left wing role. If not, it's a Martinelli. You've got to throw Saka into that. Right wing, you've got Nelson and Pepe. Obviously, at Arsenal or any team, there's always going to be competition, but you've got to think about it logically. So we'll have to see what happens in that regard. We've also been linked with Okan Koku again, people. And I believe he's spoken on the interest from not only us but Seville. He said, "It doesn't really matter to me. Frankly, my father and my agent are busy with that. I tried to isolate myself from that. That works fine. Fortunately, I'm a footballer and not an agent. When the moment arrives, and I feel good about it, we'll see. I want to make the best of next season. I want to be as fit as possible when the season starts. For now, I'm only working with Feyenoord. I have a contract until 2023, so I'm not in a hurry." And, you know, that's expected, and that's what you should say. You know, you play well on the football field, everything off the field takes care of it. And, you know, I'm sure he is enticed by the prospect of playing for Arsenal and Seville and all the other teams he's been linked with, but you've got to keep it professional and not allow yourself to dream. You've got to just carry on what you're doing with Feyenoord and, you know, carry on doing what you've been doing that's alerted all these team scouts or managers or whatever to wanting to bring you to the club. And that's sorry people for kicking the camera. That's the right thing to say. Finally, and you know, I do believe a lot of what football clubs are doing, my football team as well, is performative and stuff like that. But I'm sure you've all seen in the Brentford friendly, the players took a knee and the players were wearing a lot of shirts with various messages. Now, Hector Bellerin is someone I've got a lot of time for, not just as a footballer, but he speaks for what's right. I like how he's away from political matters. He's not afraid to be himself, to have long hair, to like fashion, which people might not, you know, have as an image of a footballer. He's daring to have passions away from football, and he dares to be himself, really. I really like that from him. And I like that he speaks out for what's right. Climate change, racism, you know, all of these bad things in life that we shouldn't have to speak about in the ideal world. He's very vocal about it, and I really like that from him. Apparently, you know, in relation to Arsenal, Hector Bellerin represented Arsenal and was among other club captains who told the Premier League in a conference call that players intend to show their support for protesters in the streets after the death of George Floyd and support the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you haven't seen it, go on Hector Bellerin's own YouTube channel. He did a good video with Yedlin of Newcastle about that stuff, people. Apparently as well, finally on this matter, Bellerin, Coleman and Troy Deeney were all particularly vocal during the meeting, stating their belief that soccer had a duty to make its voice heard on a social issue that matters so much, not just to its fans, but also to its people. And for Troy Deeney and Coleman, it's very obvious to see why they would stand up. I mean, it's something that affects Deeney. Deeney is very much a man of the people. And Coleman, obviously someone that is of our Irish nationality. He knows exactly what prejudice feels like and racism feels like and being discriminated against feels like. So I can imagine how vocal they were. And there's probably a bag of other men that aren't necessarily captains that were just as vocal and stuff. The problem is, what I want to see from players and what I want to see from everybody, I'm not criticising anybody's actions, I'm not criticising the messages and stuff. It feels like when tackling racism and tackling these things, it stops at performative stuff. It stops at the knees, it stops at the hashtags, it stops at the t-shirts. You know, we really need to tackle it. We need to go and say, okay, cool, why don't the coaching staff of many clubs reflect the diversity shown at fan and player levels? When racism does rear its head on the football field, black players, are you actually going to stand up and walk off now? Or white players, are you going to, even though it don't affect you necessarily, because if it doesn't, if black players are targeted, are you going to show solidarity and say, you know what, this ain't right? Because could you imagine the headlines if Harry Kane walked off, if Dele Alli was verbally abused because of his class, versus if Dele Alli walked off? It would send a powerful message, and maybe other people would wake up and think such people. So yeah, man, and I think a lot of brands, football clubs need to do a lot of soul searching, mine included, people, because there is a lot of work we could be doing. There is more that could be done. But on this topic though, people, we've spoken about young players, we've touched on transfers, we vaguely touched on Emile Smith Rowe and them things there. I think I've spoken enough. I need to go record some other vids, but Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you check out my description or the comments and vote for me in the Football Content Awards. Most importantly, please stay safe. Please cherish these moments, especially at a tough time globally. On that note, DG, God bless. I'm out.